Hey everybody, what's up? It's your boy MJ and welcome to the Black Wine Guy Experience. My guest today is the founder and winemaker of Massican Wines, Dan Petroski. Dan was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, where he went on to play football at Columbia in that grinding Ivy League. He went on to work for Time Inc. while also studying for his MBA at NYU. Both were ingredients for a promising future in magazine publishing. He began his wine education literally by wining and dining clients around Manhattan's best restaurants. Thank God for the expense account. And after an attractive job opportunity from the Wall Street Journal, Dan decided to make some big life and career changes. He set off for Sicily, where he interned at
Valle dell'Acate.
for a year. And Dan originally intended to return to New York City to sell wine, but later received a harvest invitation in 2006 in Napa Valley. Not long after that, he was hired as cellar master and ultimately claiming the Larkmead winemaker title in 2012. However, in 2009, Dan launched his own wine business called Massican, which specializes in Italian-inspired white wines. Massican is a one-man operation where Dan manages the winemaking, sales, and marketing. His approach and ability to craft wines as diverse as Cabernet Sauvignon and Tocai Friulano has earned him the recognition as San Francisco Chronicle's Winemaker of the Year in 2017. Welcome, Dan. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you, MJ. I'm super happy to be here.
I'm so glad we can sit down and do this in person, man. Tell us about the wine we're drinking this evening.
Oh, for sure. This is a long story. This could take up half the
That's
pod.
okay.
So we are drinking a 1992 Semillon from just outside of Rome. It's a wine called Friulano. It is a wine that's inspired a lot of controversy, a lot of mystery. But this prince who inherited this property after World War II had all these old vines there, Malvasia, Semillon, some Cabernet Sauvignon, some Sangiovese, some Merlot, and he was very much a recluse, and he made these wines in his cellar. I mean, it's Lazio outside of Rome's not known for its wine production. It was back in the ancient Roman Empire, but not today. And he just never sold the wine. Like he took money for the wines, but never shipped them out. It was really hard. It was really hard for people to get a hold of him, to transact business with him. Eric Asimov did a great story on him about a decade or so ago in the New York Times, and it also spurred Abe Schoner, a friend of mine from California, winemaker, to kind of name his wine "The Prince in the Caves." And this wine, if you're looking at it, if we were on TV here, it's got
we have the clips. They'll see the color. Yeah.
Got this beautiful amber color to it. It's not an orange wine per se. It's more of a sherry style. It's aged with the floor in these big vats, and it's really just the acidity of Semillon and the kind of vibrancy of Malvasia makes some really interesting complex wines. So I just ran down locally here to Flatiron Wines, which had it on their shelf, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me! I got to bring this to MJ because that's probably something he may not have
Never
had."
ever had. Didn't even know they grew Semillon anywhere in Italy.
Yeah, and it's just it's a fun, unique wine. It's it's one of those meditation wines where you think about it, talk about it, you smell it, you sniff it, and swirl it in your mouth and in your glass, and maybe eat a little food with it, a little crudo or some kind of fried fruits. But it's rare. It's when you see these bottles around, it's always worth the shot.
I mean, I don't think I've ever had. This is definitely the oldest white wine I've ever had from Italy, right? So this is like almost a 30-year-old white wine from Italy, which we'll get into it when we get into Massican, but like Italy's typically known for their crisp, young, they're just for quaffing and just for that in life. But this is very special. Thank you for bringing this.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
So you had an interesting start to your wine career. It was taking people out, but like let's go back. So you're from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
What part of Brooklyn did you grow up in, man?
I grew up in a little park called Windsor Terrace, kind of near South Park Slope, Sunset Park area. It's kind of a little hamlet there. It's got the best bagels in New York City, in my opinion, in the whole 5 boroughs. At Windsor, at Terrace Bagels, and it's got Farrell's Pub, but it was a classic classic youth New York City film. You see it all the time. Row houses. We played every kind of ball there is with a single Spalding, and it was stickball, baseball, stoop ball, box ball, slap ball, wiffle ball. Like we played it all. Like it was just like 60 row houses, a bunch of kids, varying ages, and it was a really fun. It was a moment that I don't think we'll see much of again in that kind of style of like growing up in the 80s in New York City.
Yeah, very cool. So, and then you went on, so you had your little, it's great, but how'd you find football? Because you played college, you played Division I college football.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I didn't play organized. I wasn't allowed to play basketball when I was a kid because the coach thought I was too aggressive. I was too fat as a kid to play baseball and like run, to run really well and get around the bases. So it was just I was going into high school trying to figure out what to do next. Very kind of provincial in the sense of like my family. We were just small town, blue collar Brooklyn family, and so I had the opportunity to go to Xavier in Manhattan, so in Chelsea here, and they were Jesuit military school, which I wasn't interested in. I was like, maybe I'll try the football team, and I was able to do that and go play some football there. Had a great time. With 4 years with some great kids from Rockaways and Flatbush and Manhattan, all kind of like bussing into Red Hook to practice, and then back to the city, and then taking a train home back to Brooklyn, and that was it. Yeah, and then I got recruited. I mean, I didn't know, Ivy League football was what was on Channel 13, like public television,
right.
at like 11 a.m. on a Saturday. I was like, I'd rather be watching Abbott and Costello or something, or some cartoons. So I didn't really know what it was, and then I chose Columbia because I was like, wow, I want to go work on Wall Street, so they're going to hire someone from Manhattan, went to school in Manhattan. Yeah. I didn't know its pedigree. I mean, that wasn't my family.
My God, that's awesome.
My parents didn't go to college, so like, I had no idea.
It was just like, if I go to college in Manhattan,
I'll get a job on Wall Street. And, senior year in high school, I took an economics class, and I fake bought, some Berkshire Hathaway, is my stock portfolio. But yeah, that was it. And but when I got to Columbia, it was just a whole new world. I was like, oh wow, there's some really smart people in this world, and they're only 18 years old.
Yeah. So what was that like? I mean, because you said you come from a blue collar family, first generation college educated, and then you're like, there's generational people who go to Ivy League schools, right? Like there's dumbasses who get to go because just, I have a friend who, he's very smart, but like when his dad went to Yale, he studied like equestrian studies. Like they had like shit like that, right? Like they had weird stuff at these schools, like going way back.
And pizza.
Right. But
New Haven pizza.
Oh yeah, we'll get to New Haven pizza. But so like what was that? I mean, you said it was a culture shock, but like what was like, and what's it like moving away from home? Like, but you're not moving far, but it's like a whole different world, right? From Brooklyn to upper west side of Manhattan.
MJ, you nailed it. I was far enough to be away from home and not live at home, but also close enough to like go home and do my laundry. Yeah. It was awesome. And not have to worry about being on a plane for Thanksgiving like a lot of my friends. Yeah. But it was a culture shock. There was a lot of really smart people who wanted to be there for academic profile. I rejected that as my first year as a freshman. I was put on academic probation for the football team because I was under 2.0. And I had to like hustle my studies to get my shit together, and then it was just really hard. But I mean, I had to take. I didn't take any chemistry or any sciences in high school, so I didn't want to take chemistry like everybody else, and so I had to wait to fulfill that. And I ended up taking rocks for jocks, and who knew I'd actually make wine one day, and rocks mattered, and geology mattered.
Right, so that's the nickname for the class?
Yeah, that's the nickname.
Okay, that'd been so cool if that was actually in the fucking course catalog. It was like, rocks for jocks, you boneheads.
I feel like my textbook was like, it had pictures of dinosaurs, it was like cartoon drawings. I was like, it was just really,
came with crayons.
Really strange. But yeah, so it was. But so I worked really hard, because I was embarrassed for not doing well academically, and then I worked really hard, and I I feel like Mickey Mantle. And I know this is a really weird comparison, but he finished his lifetime career as like a 299 batting average. I finished my academic career at like 2.95 GPA, and I wanted to get to 3, and then but I'm proud of my time there, and I'm proud of what I learned, and it taught me to think.
Yeah. So when you were at Columbia, you're an athlete. So typically, you didn't work at all. Did you have any jobs while you're in school, or?
Oh no, I worked.
Okay.
I was on financial aid. My parents split when I was young, so we had I had to do work study.
Okay.
We had a program. I stayed in the summers in Manhattan to work for Columbia University Housing. Columbia owns they're the 5th largest landowner in Manhattan. That's crazy.
Yeah. Same thing. Yale owns like 65 or 70% of New Haven.
Yeah, it's nuts.
But it saves New Haven. New Haven would be a total shithole. New Haven would be Bridgeport if Yale weren't there. So it's a catch-22. Largest employer in New Haven, But people don't understand, and they don't pay tax. Yale doesn't. And Columbia probably don't pay. They don't pay tax. That's a thing too, though.
It's like the church.
Yeah.
The church in Manhattan owns the other. They're one of the top 5 as well.
So it's one of those weird things. See, we drop knowledge on this show for you people who don't know how the world really works. So
you have to be a part of a church, and you have to go to an Ivy League school not to pay taxes and live in Manhattan.
There you go. Consequently, that's why I do not live in Manhattan. I am neither. Although I did go to college in New Haven. I'll just leave it at that. That's what I'll tell you people. Where your mind goes. So you said your family, your parents split up when you were young. So there was never like a wine culture growing up or anything. Or was there?
Well, there was, but it was in the classic sense of my father being a wino. There was a terminology of being a wino was a drop down wine drunk, someone who drank wine, and it spanned wine, beer, everything. There wasn't like a beero. There was a wine.
Right.
A drunk was a wino. So that was the culture. So we weren't really big drinkers. My mom would buy a bottle of red wine every Saturday when she went shopping. She would drink it on Monday to Friday when she got home from work. Big, huge goblet of red wine with ice cubes in it. Stored it in the refrigerator so it's nice and cold. And then when I, fast forward to the point when I told my mother and my brother I was going to move to Italy to pursue a wine career, they basically had to come to Jesus and said, your father was an alcoholic. And I was like, and it was, wino was an alcoholic, right? And I was like, oh no, this is different. It has to do with rocks and stuff and grapes.
Grapes and rocks.
So they didn't realize that there was this kind of romanticness, history around the wine industry that, a very small group of us in this world really kind of play into.
Yeah. So you graduate from Columbia, and then did you go right to grad school? Did you go to work first? What did you do next after you graduated from Columbia?
I actually left town. I moved to Detroit for a summer, and then to Chicago. So I was in Detroit and Chicago for about 12 months. Worked for a consumer marketing company. And I realized that there was, I went to change jobs there and go work in an advertising agency. Because when I was in college, I also did a lot of internships. I worked at Interview Magazine. I worked at New York Times. I worked at Benetton Sports Systems. I worked at Tommy Hilfiger, all in advertising, sales, marketing positions. So I was going down that path. I didn't go down the Wall Street path. Unfortunately, I'd be drinking a lot better today if I did.
I know. I'm like, could have been done at 40 with a $1 million cellar.
But and then when I realized that that job at in the advertising agency was paying $18,000 a year, I said I got to get the hell out of here. So I left Chicago and moved back to New York without a job.
Why Chicago? I'm just curious.
I went to a training program in Detroit with this company called Entertainment Publications, and they have offices all over the world. And I just moved to Chicago, and I loved it. To this day, I still have a warm spot in my heart for Chicago. I think it brings the best and the brightest out of the Midwest into this, metropolis that is just really amazing people, good community, good neighborhoods. Reminded me a lot of, home.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I mean, because my grandparents lived in Chicago. I didn't spend a lot of time there, but when I was younger, but older, when you meet people, like there's lots of cities in the Midwest, but like I said, I mean, like it's like anything else. If you move from Detroit to Chicago, you move from Milwaukee to Chicago, like it brings the best and brightest, and it's a different it's not the Midwest. It's Chicago. You know.
Agree 100%.
You know. I mean, it is the Midwest, but you know exactly what I'm saying. So, you were working in advertising, getting grossly underpaid because I'm sure you had student loans. $18K a year is not going to cut it.
No, but I made the whoppingly good choice of going to advertising to publishing on the edit side, and paid me a lot more money. Just a ton of money. And no, I did. I came back to New York, and I ended up getting a job. This is 1996. Getting a job at Sports Illustrated to work in their online department, online division,
their swimsuit edition division. That's what he thought. Right?
The online 1996.
That's like cutting edge.
Building websites.
I know. Yeah, that's cutting edge. 96. People don't get that. These kids don't get like the internet. Like I think I got my first email address like in 96. I mean, it had been out but for a while, and I was 25. So I was like, email, Ishmael.
Dude, same. I mean, I literally dropped a class my senior year in college, 1994, going into 95, because the professor said you had to email your homework in. I'm like, I don't know what that is. And 1994, 95, and I left. And I was like, I dropped that class. I'll take the other one, the other Rocks for Jocks class. And literally a year later, I'm building, fantasy sports games for Sports Illustrated for kids online. I'm running I'm the commissioner of the website instead of webmaster, and just doing some really cool fun stuff, photo editing, working with writers, working with designers, layout people, hand coding HTML, just doing all this fun, cool shit. And at the same time, I was, aggressive and ambitious, and I was writing business plans for magazines, and I pitched a couple to Time Inc. while I was working in the online department of Sports Illustrated, and the 34th floor, the floor where all the C-level execs live, they were like, we got to get this kid out of the online department. I think he's got some potential. So they moved me, they helped me get a job in consumer marketing at Time Magazine, and that rolled into finance department, and then that rolled into advertising sales. And then, during that progression, every 2 years I was doing something new. Came some respectability, came the corporate card, came the dining out in New York City, entertaining clients, drinking well, eating well, learning about wine, teaching myself about wine. And that was the impetus to a lot of where I stand today, from just gaining knowledge and history with wine.
So a movie I really like is the remake, Ben Slowed, of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, about the decline of about how digital publishing took over from print publishing. You seems like you were kind of in that era with Time Inc. And you're pitching magazine ideas. So what was like, from a text point of view, what was it like as magazines and these big behemoths were beginning to, because Time Warner owned AOL, like beginning to pivot, like what was that like to you were kind of in the center of that, actually?
No, it was great. I mean, Time Inc., Time Warner in 1996, 1997, they started Pathfinder, which was a content hub for all the publications, Time, Sports Illustrated, Money, Fortune, People, Entertainment Weekly. And it was like, people were throwing money at it, but the advertising wasn't there yet, and subscribing wasn't there yet, because people were subscribing to AOL and CompuServe, and then with AOL and CompuServe, you got this access to the World Wide Web, and so no one was going to pay for more stuff after that.
The World Wide Web, like we're so old.
So, CompuServe.
I work with kids. They don't even know like that the internet is on their phone. Like they're just like, whatever, it's my phone, man. Like they don't even think it's like it's an app.
It's amazing. We can have a whole nother talk about the blockchain and how that's going to change everything, and the metaverse.
We're
and
going to
Web
get
3.0.
into that because you're doing some pretty cool stuff. So you mentioned it. Let's talk about. So the C-level execs like, this kid's, we like the cut of his jib. Let's get this young man. let's see. This young man's got potential. And so you started doing different stuff like every couple of years, you said, and then the expense account came. So what was so obviously that, I'm going to go out on a limb, but that's where you really started to dive into food and wine.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was a first meal, like you went out and then you learn and you were like, oh fuck, I gotta learn about wine. Like there had to be like an occasion or something that spawned that. Or you just might have loved it,
No, it actually didn't happen with any of my clients. It happened with some of my friends' clients. So all of the smarter people in my class went to work on Wall Street and make all the big bucks, but they were still very mindful of of eating and drinking. And when Wall Street guys and girls go out, they tend to look at the wine list, and they're going to steakhouses, and they're, this is the late '90s, early 2000s, and they're looking at things like Opus One and
Silver
Screaming
Oak,
Eagle, Insignia, and they're just like $200, $300, $400 a bottle. People are pointing at it, and so it got to a point where some of my friends were like, "Hey, Dan, we hang out with you anyway. You know some of my clients. Come with us and like just navigate the wine list because my expense budget is kind of." It's kind of tight this month, and like I'm gonna give you the wine list because you're the wine guy, and I was able to kind of like buy wines that were 40 to 60, 70 on the list with a good story, and I was able to tell the story, and everyone like then they didn't care. It wasn't about like, oh, I'm buying the most expensive because it's on someone else's dime, and that's how this business works. But people then got in; they were like, oh yeah, cool, and it didn't depress the situation at all for my friends who were entertaining clients. It actually elevated the experience. And so that's kind of like, that was when it happened to me, and it happened in all the steakhouses of New York City. and I transferred that over to my life, at Time Inc. in entertaining clients and then going out. I remember getting kicked out of the Palace Hotel where Time Magazine was hosting an event because my clients were underdressed. And my boss was like, get those guys out of here. And there's two young girls in their 20s just coming straight from the ad agency. They're like, get them out of here. This is not, you guys can't, you guys are not dressed for the occasion. He's like, go next door and have dinner. And I was like, that's Le Cirque. And I was like, are you? And I didn't say that out loud, but I'm like, that's Le Cirque. I'm like, are you paying? He's like, yeah, I'm paying. So I went and blew up Le Cirque, on his dime. So it was awesome. I mean, New York City during that era, the early, late '90s, early 2000s. If I only knew what I knew today. I mean, hindsight's 2020. We all say that, but oh my God, I mean. The amount of crazy drinking that could have went on if you go back in time. That's when you want the time machine. You want that time machine to go back to some of the great restaurants of New York City in the late '90s and start, drinking Petrus for a couple $100 or DRC for a couple $100.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like that was working in at Acker, which is high level in New York in the late '90s. The tastings were ridiculous. Like I, when the Wine Spectator came out with its top 10 wines of the century, and before remember Y2K? Of course you did, because you were coding. Oh my God! But like I had 8 of the 10 wines of the century because they were available, they were around, and they were affordable. Compared to what they are, And obviously, I was like, your boss, like I was working with high-end clients, they could afford it anyway. They still can afford that shit. But like now there's less of it. And it was and if I go back, I would like, oh my God, I'd be dead if I go back. So I don't want to go back. So you become the wine guy for all your friends, and you're learning about wine. How did it grow? Like what made you decide to you had this career, man. You could be like the head of Time Warner Publisher now or something, like you were on a track. What made you pivot and break out and go to Sicily?
A couple of things. One, I knew I needed to leave the side of the business I was on, which was, when you worked internally at Time Inc., there was the men's publication, and then there was the women's services. And women's, like People Magazine, Entertainment Weekly, Real Simple, In Style, they were crushing it. Like, they were making so much goddamn money.
Sexiest man alive.
And I needed that could have been me.
I was like, you could have been on the cover. Sexiest publisher alive.
And I said I knew I needed to get on that side of the business, but I also was thinking like, oh, I need to go, and Wall Street Journal was launching the weekend edition, and they kind of recruited me, and I was like, oh, this would be a really cool opportunity. I don't have to get out of my comfort zone. But I had taken a trip with some business school classmates to our buddy's hometown in Sicily, and we spent a week there, and we just had the best time ever. And this was October of 2004.
I bet Sicily in October is just...
Oh, it's great. Just right. Harvest is still kind of going on. The weather is perfect. And we just had a blast. And so when I got back and I started thinking about my career, when Wall Street Journal started recruiting me, I was thinking about this experience in Sicily, never living abroad, always feeling bad about it. 'Cause playing college football, I couldn't do semesters abroad. I had to kind of like stay local. I grew up in an Italian American family. I studied art history in college. I studied ancient Roman history in college. So there was some of my minors. And everything was like, I need to live abroad. I didn't travel. We didn't travel as kids and as a family. Went to Long Beach Island, went to Beach Haven, New Jersey. That was our
LBI.
That was
Yeah,
our,
see, it's people like Dan why the Jersey Shore, because the people on TV are all from fucking Brooklyn. They're not from Jersey. We know how to act at the beach.
So and it just during the holidays, I had this conversation with my mom about working, and she at the time was like, I'm going to work till I'm 70. I love it. I love the people. They bring me energy. She was obviously an empty nester at that point. I was the youngest of four, and I was 33 at the time. So she's like, I just love work. It's great. And I left that conversation with her, and I was like, oh my God, that's another 40 years I'm going to work. Like, I haven't lived 40 years yet. That's a long freaking time. Yep. And so it's like, it's now or never. I had no relationships to kind of to anchor me to New York City. I owned a small apartment. I knew I can kind of cash out and make some money and fund a year sabbatical. So I was free to do what I wanted to do. Yeah. And that's so I basically turned down one job, quit another job, sold an apartment. Called prior to that, I called my friend from Sicily who was living in New Jersey at the time, and asked him, I was like, hey, could you introduce me to those people? We went to that big old palazzo and we drank some wine and ate some, some really cool like fresh fish. And I was like, I want to go and just live in Europe and maybe work on a vineyard or something. And he was like, you're crazy, go work at the Wall Street Journal. And I was like, no, seriously, make the call. And so we made the call. And that's how I got the Valle dell'Acate, and I basically worked 3 days a week with a father and son who owned 50% of a cooperative business, and they were mostly the viticultural side. So kind of went there, did some harvesting, did some pruning, did all that stuff, and I just lived in Italy for a year and traveled around a lot of Italy's wine growing regions and explored. And then just visited some friends in London that were living there, spent some time in Paris, and just kind of lived a life I never, I always thought about and aspired to based on what I saw in the pages of magazines. I was like one of the charter subscribers to Condé Nast Traveler when I was like 16 years old. I was a kid who never left the country, only been to New Jersey, and I was reading Condé Nast, Traveler at 16. So I always had a vision for, kind of living outside of my world.
Oh, very nice. So that's a pretty good gig, because when most people go to work harvest, if you go to work harvest in fucking California, like you go work all day, every day for 30, 40 days. How'd you get this 3-day gig at Valle dell'Acate?
It was like I wasn't legally there, and it was that period of time when they put in that 90-day thing where you have to get out of the country 90 days, come back. And what I learned very quickly when I traveled in and out of airports in Rome was just pretend like the Italians are great people. They're the most hospitable, welcoming people in the world. You just walk up to the immigration and be like, buongiorno, and they're like, hey, and then you just throw me a passport. They don't check. It's like, hey, go on. And it's just it was really easy, like, to get in and out and to move around the country. And it was, and I was fortunate. They drove me to work every morning. They got me a coffee, an espresso on the side of the road at the gas station.
My God, that's awesome.
Went to the vineyard. We left at 11:30, 12, brought me back to their house, cooked me a little lunch. And that was it. It wasn't, I always say I didn't learn how to make wine. I didn't learn how to grow grapes when I lived in Sicily. I learned how to appreciate wine, because on Monday when we started work and had lunch at their house, we opened a bottle of wine, put it on the break front. On Wednesday when we came back, took it off of the kind of the break front over next to the dining room table, poured ourselves a glass of wine, put the cork in it, put it back. On Friday, same fucking bottle of wine. And we're in a 200-year-old palazzo. These guys have owned wine. They've been in the wine business. They're third generation. I was expecting to be ripping corks on, Netto dAvila from the 40s, out of their dusty old cellar. And we're drinking current wines they pull from the winery on Mondays. We drink one bottle a week, 3 people, 9 glasses.
And they don't have Zalto or Jancis Robinsons or Riedel. It's just like a little
6-ounce, glass water.
Yeah.
Thing, cup.
It's like, hey, What's this about?
But I do want to tell one more story about
Please.
Enzo Pontoni from Miani, who's a genius, also another recluse like the prince. But he, I went and tasted with him in 2010 as I started getting into Italian white wines, making a Massican in Napa Valley, making Tocai, Friulano, Ribolla Gialla, working with these Northeast Italian grapes. And he's a monster of a man. He makes me look small. He took us out. Met him at 6:00 at his winery. Took us out to the vineyards in the rain. Came back, drank some wine. I asked if I can buy wine. He said no red wines, only white wines. €30 a bottle. I had no cash. He said come back tomorrow. I come back tomorrow with the cash. Sitting in his mom's kitchen with my wife, my girlfriend at the time, and then his Enzo's kid and like these 3 older gentlemen who just like came with like a bag of cheese, a bag of bread, a bag of prosciutto, and cured meats. And I was just like on his little tiny table about the size of where we are sitting having this chat. And then Enzo comes in later. He's like, "Oh, you're back, blah, blah, blah." And I gave him a bottle of Massican. He went to the cellar to get it. He wanted to taste it. And then he put it in the freezer. And then when we're eating, the three gentlemen pull out the cheese, the bread, and all of a sudden, we slam the bottle of Massican. He gets up, squeezes behind me, opens the door from under the sink where like the garbage can and the Windex are located. And he pulls out the 3 bottles of wine that we drank yesterday, sitting at the same table, and it was like that Merlot at the time was a $300 bottle of Merlot in a New York City retail shop, and he put it under the sink next to the garbage can, and I was like, so I always, long story short, but it's an important one. I learned how to appreciate it. I learned that wine isn't precious. We treat wine very preciously here in the United States. They're assets to us, and even though they're liquid assets, but they're
You're supposed to drink that shit, man.
It's not supposed to be that precious.
It isn't.
And that's what I learned.
I won't go Patrick Cappiello far, but it is not. It's not that. It's. You said it's not as precious. We're so good in America at capitalism and commodization. It's like seriously, man.
We're good. Yeah, we're good at adding value to things,
or we're good at the creation of value. I don't know if we add value, but we are good at creating the impression of value.
Nailed it. That nailed it. You said it best right there.
This
is now a business podcast.
Everybody. Yeah. It's not just. This is not just about wine.
Never.
Never. It shouldn't be. Wine is a conduit for conversations. That's all.
100% agree.
And you're. So. You know what? Let's take a quick break and then we'll come back. So we can take a quick break, and I'll be right back more with Dan Petroski. Okay, we're back. So, before we leave Sicily, do you have any more? Tell people about Sicily, because I saw, I watch a bunch of shows because I want to have my own show, right? So I'm watching Food Network, and I'm watching travel shows, and I'm watching Tucci, and I'm watching blah blah blah. But Sicily's really, people don't realize how dope Sicily is, because it was a port, like all the influences. So what was it like to have all those? Obviously, you had begun your food and wine journey, but like every part of the world went through Sicily. What's it like? Talk about like the food and just like and the spices and
No, you nailed it. It's I can't remember if it was Plato or Socrates who once wrote, translating here, that Sicily was the lily pad of the Mediterranean. It's where all 16 bordering countries of the Mediterranean at some point in time had influence in Sicily and domination and rule. And what they left is this an amazing culture of food. And it's like, so from one side of the island to the other, you go from, the fresh fish and very Greek style kind of, fried foods. And then you go to the other side of the island, it's very Moroccan and North, African, and it's just crazy and it's beautiful. And all those things make up this kind of this wonderful melting pot of diversity of food and wine. But it was great. I mean, I lived right near the Piazza Duomo in downtown Catania on the eastern seaboard. We had probably the best open air market in Europe, in my opinion. I mean, there was a fish market plus vegetable market, and it was great because a little old lady who lived in my building showed me around. She said, "This is where you buy your cheese, this is where you buy your bread,
awesome.
this is where you buy your toilet paper, this is where you buy the bottled water, and this is your tomato guy. That's your fig guy." And literally everything was €1 1 kilo, 2.2 pounds of tomatoes for $1.18, which was a conversion at the, and it literally it was like €1 per kilo, €1 per kilo, and I would go and just like acquire all this stuff like once a week, and then you had to get to the bread shop before 12:30 or they closed and it was over.
Wow.
So I had to do all this, and it was just amazing. And we drank, the reason why Massican is here today is because of my living in Sicily. It's obviously Mediterranean climate, very hot, very dry, very breezy, good diurnals. We drank so much white wine. And in 2005, 2006, Mount Etna was basically a white wine producer. Cornelison and those guys, that came in there in like 02, 03, they really hadn't gotten going yet. Red wine, I met Benanti family, who I rented an apartment from, had the greatest white wine in Italy, Pietro Medina in the late 90s. They bought some land in the southeast to, that was Nero dAvila, vineyards, because they were like, yeah, Etna's not the future. This is 05, right?
Oh my God.
And they're like, Etna's not the future. Nero dAvila, it's like this. It's kind of this new. It's the new Syrah.
Right.
It's a spicy, crunchy, red fruited. Has really good kind of kind of textures, and it has really good aromas, and it has a mid palate. So they were going to go all in on that, and then they ended up, it was around 2008 when Jancis Robinson, dropped the mic on Sicily and said that Etna could be like the Burgundy of Italy, and everyone was like, "What?" And that's literally when I think the red wines of Mount Etna became important or popular. But prior to that, like, I don't remember ever drinking, unless I went to a winery, drinking a Etna red when I was living there for a year.
Mm-hmm.
We always bought Etna whites. So,
and what is it about Mount Etna that, with the whites, for you, that you found so compelling?
Living that close, I mean, if you're on Eastern Seaboard, like Mount Etna dominates. Living in Catania,
Kind of like Rainier, if you're out.
Yeah,
you just see it. It's huge.
It's right up there. It's the third largest active volcano in Europe. It is, got elevation. It's right upon the sea, so it's got cooler climates. It's got, humidity from the sea. It's just everything there. It's got the actual, volcanic soils, real volcanic soils, lava.
Right. Actually, like we have them here, but it's like from the Jurassic period. They're like, no, that shit is like it could blow any moment now, bro.
and I think the one thing that I was talking to someone about recently, because obviously Napa Valley has been kind of the tragedies of the fires we've had, and all of California, Sonoma County, not just Napa and Sonoma, but all of California in the last 5 years. I was talking to someone about, like, oh, we should talk to people in Mount Etna. Like, that fucking volcano blows like 3 or 4 times a year. Like, there's ash and smoke. How did the winemakers deal with that? Like, it's a constancy. Like, it's not like it happens like 5 or 6 times a year. Like, you just, like, there it goes again, and everyone stops the car, takes a picture. So yeah, it was just great, and the white wines are just. They're just everything I want them to be, and that's where I think about Massican. It's like I want to drink white wines from the Mediterranean. They have to have a little bit of that almondy character to it. They have to have the salinity to it. They have to have the florals, the blossoms, citrus trees. They have to have just they don't have to have fruit. I don't consider citrus kind of how we think about California sunshine and fruitfulness in a wine.
Right.
I think of citrus as that kind of like it's a little bit more like. Basically a characteristic as opposed to like it's not a fruitfulness.
No, it's tart, tangy, but it's not. You don't like an apricot. There's a difference between an unripe apricot and a ripe apricot. A lemon's a fucking lemon. You got to put some sugar on it if you want to be sweet. So you're right. It's not a fruit in that sense. So your plan was. So you're in Sicily and you traveled around Europe, you said, and I want to stay here. This is so fun. I love it. Dan's trip around Europe. So you said you went to Paris and London. Like, did you have any really cool meals either in those places? Like the bistro thing, were you smoking Gauloise and at Bistro Paul Bert, al fresco? Like, what was that like?
No, exactly. Well, unfortunately, I moved to I moved to Italy at the same time when like Europe was banning cigarettes inside. I remember when Bloomberg banned smoking in New York City in '02, the Time Life building. You mentioned the Walter Mitty movie. You saw a lot of it in that movie. The Time Life building, we were still allowed to smoke if we closed our doors in the office.
I mean, people don't even like. I remember like
nuts, man.
Everywhere because I'm a little bit older than you, and like I remember going to the banquet mom, and people would have a cigarette on their desk. Like it was just smoke everywhere. People don't give a fuck about kids and smoking. It was just smoke everywhere. And I smoked for a while too. And like I remember when I moved to California, like it was already banned. I moved to California in '99. It was already, but you had to smoke outside. But it was Santa Barbara, so it's not a bad climate. But like that's so weird. So yeah, for Europe, I mean, and Europeans smoke differently, in my opinion, than Americans. They smoke for pleasure. We Americans, they like gotta fucking smoke for it. We're sucking it down. You're all tense. Whereas Europeans like long draws and just so calm and like
super long
yeah,
ass.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're just staring at it, waiting. It's like a movie, it's like a Fellini movie. How long do we stare at the ass
exactly
until it drops, and then it's like, oh, the death and decay, and it's just so momentous.
But
great
cinematography. Any great meals, obviously, in Paris?
I was definitely on a budget back
Okay.
then. I knew how much money I had in the bank based on what I sold a small apartment for in Brooklyn, so I wasn't killing it.
Yeah.
I was young. Even though I was early 30s, I wasn't kind of like going nuts. I was loving the pub life in London. I had good friends who lived there, so we used to always go drink beers. In Paris, I literally was there for 2 weeks. But we used to play a couple of card games where it's like, one card, screw your neighbor and stuff like that. So a couple of friends would come in and we'd literally just sit in bistros and like play these card games and be there from like noon to 4, drinking, just ordering the next carafe of white wine or red wine and just keep drinking and ordering, kind of, bistro food.
Yeah.
And bistro food and white wine is like and then laughing and playing cards and spending, wasting away 4 hours in the afternoon. Like, you want to live that. That's what vacation should be. That's what life should be.
It totally reminds me. One of my favorite movies is You, Me, and Dupree, which is so underrated because I love Owen Wilson. And he's like, I remember in Argentina, they're much more forgiving there. Like I could just spend the whole day in a cafe and no one would blink an eye, right? You don't have to work. Just fucking show up and drink wine and eat tapas or just eat bistro food all day. Like that actually is living. We work our asses off.
It's funny to say that because I was in a coffee shop in Brooklyn and I was getting my coffee and then there was a sign that said no Wi-Fi on weekends. I was like,
wow.
I was like, okay, I get it.
Exactly. Like
we've abused that privilege.
Exactly.
The coffee shop.
No more getting a cup of coffee, taking huge dumps in our bathroom, and sitting here all fucking day soaking up
4
our
hours.
Like, nope.
That's why the latte is $7.
It's a filter. Absolutely.
But yeah, it was. But the European lifestyle. It's I translate that back to the American lifestyle. And I think we have a long way to go, and we're still evolving. I mean, I personally, I think we're the food industry and the focus on, the plethora of food magazines that came out over the years, the move towards a celebrity chef. Food TV. I think we started as a culture in America during that 90s and aughts up until 2010 or so, in a 10, 15, 20-year period where food became important and relevant and a conversation piece. Yeah. And it wasn't until like around 2010 when then there was, you mentioned Patrick Cappiello, and like I'm sure he like is embarrassed for being a celebrity somm back when he was a celebrity somm, but like I think that then we went like the wine side. Now we knew where the eggs came from and the chicken's name, like that whole Portlandia joke. Yep. But now
that's a great episode.
But then it's like now
ends up wearing a dress. That was so...
But now we need to know where the grapes are from and who the farmer was and what the I just got an email. I hate to throw this guy under the bus, but I just got an email and they asked me about my vermouth. How are the grapes grown? I'm like, if you're drinking Campari or you're drinking vermouth, do you really care if the grapes were grown organically? I'm like, you're drinking the most manipulated
Campari is
thing
dirty.
in the world. Like,
Campari has it's dirty.
I'm like, let's go get a Negroni and talk natural wine. It's like it's a Portlandia episode. Like, it's just not the two things don't make sense.
Right.
So I was just I'm sorry if I just threw you under the bus.
They don't. No one knows. He knows who he is. He have to listen to this podcast. So. But I ignore those questions that come up in live. What was the bricks? Go read the fucking tech sheet, bro. Seriously, I'm having a conversation here. I'm having a conversation with a winemaker. But the plan was to come back to New York City and become the #1 wine rep in New York City, right? That was the plan.
It was. I think LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn was around then. But I didn't know what the job landscape looked like.
Okay.
So I didn't know. I had 10 years of corporate experience. I love writing business plans and love being strategic. But a small family winery, whether it be from Tuscany or California, doesn't really hire MBAs, consumer packaged good MBAs to run their business. They're a small family winery and they're just their forecast is a 10-day weather forecast. It's not like a 10-year strategic plan. And so it was really hard. I didn't know what to do except go work for a very large beverage company.
Okay.
Or, kind of be blessed with an opportunity that I was given to go continue my kind of sabbatical from life and go work at Dumal as a harvest intern and also Larkmead as a harvest intern. It's a dual internship in 2006 because the winemaker was the winemaker for both. So he wanted...
right, because that's the first time I heard the Dumal part of that. Great wine. Both of those are great wines. So how'd you get hooked up with that? Was that LinkedIn or just a friend of... How'd you get connected there?
I was very fortunate to... through a friend at the Wall Street Journal, be introduced to a friend in California who started Anthill Farms, the Pinot Noir company in 2004 when Pinot was starting to take off. And this
thanks to Sideways.
Pinot was starting to take off. That was a nice little kind of that extra push to the back of the big wheel,
movies shit like that fucks it up though, man. Because I remember being in Santa Barbara and when Steve Kistler owned Kistler, Kistler Pinot was sick in 99, 2000. I lived with this dude who would buy 8 cases of the Chardonnay just to get his 1 case of Pinot Noir. You know what I mean? And I never even seen that when I was in New York. And then Flowers had just come out. And who's the winemaker at H&O? Who was Flower? This came up yesterday.
It wasn't Ross Cobb.
No. It's come on. He worked in
Maybe it was Ross Cobb.
No, it wasn't Ross Cobb. Oh my God, he's so funny. This is the second podcast in a row where Flowers has come up and I'm drawing a freaking blank. But he's really old school, dude. Oh my God. All right, listen,
we're
you guys.
We're gonna edit this one out.
No, we're not gonna edit it out. Listen, what I love is people listen to podcasts oh MJ, that was so and so. I'm like, thanks, man. So you guys know who I'm talking about. I know. Oh my God, I can see his face. I did an IG live when I'm really early on. I can see his face. Anyway, but he has to start Flowers and just so it's interesting because like you said, Pinot became an American thing. It became popular because of a movie, basically. But some of those old school, Joseph Swan, I'm those old school RRV people, sick shit. So I digress. So you're out there with the mall. So. There's people who probably don't know Dumal and Larkmead, so please tell them about. These are Larkmead is historic. Dumal just makes killer shit. So some of the people who may not know, talk about that's pretty prestigious. I didn't realize it was the same winemaker. So talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm Andy Smith. He a Scotsman who ended up studying in New Zealand. Got his first job in California in the mid '90s. He did harvest and internship at Literai with Ted Lemon. He worked for Michael Havens at Havens.
Oh my! I used to love Havens Borico because I'm a Cheval Blanc fan. Ugh.
And so he then got a job working for Paul Hobbs, and when he was working for Paul Hobbs,
you just got me naming all the ballers, bro.
Yeah, and his 3 clients were Dumal, Gemstone, and Larkmead. One of his 3 clients, because Paul had assistants who then did all his work for him, and Andy was he was super talented. And when he decided to break off on his own, he took Dumal, Larkmead, and Gemstone with him. Dumal had started in 1996. Larkmead started to make wines commercially in 1997. So it was Paul Hobbs helped, kind of launch those brands. Larkmead has been around for 125, 26 years now, but they were they're a modern winemaking brand. Like they sold grapes from 1948 to 1997. They still sell grapes today. They didn't make wine during that, 50-year period of the second half of the 20th century. And Andy kind of helped bring them to prominence, and then also at Dumal, he became an owner. But yeah, I used to look up to him, and I still do to this day. I mean, he at the time when 95 points mattered, he had 95 points over like 6 different grape varieties. Not a lot of people had that kind of
that
breadth.
range, man. That range.
He was just, everyone talks about Michel Rolland being a great blender. I've because of the way we used to make Larkmead, it was really great to watch this man blend and learn from that. So I always, I think he has a knack at like picking the wine. And he offered me. He liked me because I knew Morrissey. I knew about Morrissey. It was his favorite band, and I was an adult, and I was 33 years old. I lived in
knew
Europe.
About the Smiths, Wheel Around the Fountain,
and so like I was mature. Like when you get a lot of harvest interns, they're usually like younger. They're harvest hopping from the southern hemisphere to northern hemisphere, and so forth and so on, and so we just kind of got on well together, and he trusted that I was going to work hard, and he nicknamed me the Machine, and he knew that I was curious, and he knew that I would lock the doors at night when I left Larkmead, and I literally was at Larkmead by myself for 10 years in the cellar, and I was the only person who worked in the cellar for 10 years, and then when we reinvented Larkmead in 2013 and released in 2016, they wanted to put me on the road more. So I hired my first assistant winemaker in 2016, and that was, so I basically did all the wine work, during the off season. Harvest, we brought in interns, but during the off season, I did all the wine work for Larkmead, all the wine work for Massican, and it's repetition, man. It's just the repetition, just doing it over and over and over again. Winemaking, I hate to say this, is manufacturing, and you just got to you do the same thing every day, and true winemaking. The art of winemaking is the vision of what you want to create. Right. It's not art or artisanship in making it. It's just the artisanship and art of what you want to create, and seeing the vision for the vineyard into the glass, and that's where I think the art is. And some people can see the vineyard into the glass, and I try to train myself on that.
Yeah, I used to be like a trainer, like success trainer, all that shit, sales trainer, and I should tell people all the time, success is not sexy. Success is doing the same shit over and fucking over. Cats ran for 25 years, saying the same fucking lines every fucking night. It's not really sexy to be successful. But like you said, there was a vision when they sat down. We're gonna do this cat. It's gonna be incredible. With costuming, but like the actual success part, I remember seeing this thing on the Eagles. They were like, they broke up because one guy's like, I don't want to sing. He's like, motherfucker, you're going to sing that fucking song. It pays the bills. Like, you're singing the same fucking songs every night. It was over Ticket to the Limit.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like,
well, it's, and I, just going back to the sports analogies, I don't know if it was John Wooden or Phil Jackson or who said it, but, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Yep. And that's, as you said, it's not sexy to get out there and run routes and blocking and tackling and all that shit. It's not sexy, but it, on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, that's when it comes to fruition. Right.
So you actually, you said you were in the cellar at Larkmead for 10 years long, but you started Massican in 2009. What was the inspiration? What was the vision, if you will?
It was the fact that I kind of just threw myself in waist deep into Pinot Noir and Cabernet and Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc and Merlot for 4 years living in California wine country, but asking myself, why are we drinking these things when it's,
why am I drinking this fucking Merlot?
Like, it's like, houses are small, yards are, I want to say tall, bikini small, heels tall. No, houses are small, yards.
Said she liked the ocean.
Going back to Cabernet. I love it.
I love it.
But
Cheers to that.
No, but seriously, the we did a lot of dining outdoors. We into the early evenings, and the early evenings stayed really warm.
Right.
I lived in Calistoga, and it's like the warmest part of Napa Valley. In the evening, it hits peak temp between 4 and 6, and then it starts to die down. And it just reminded me so much of the Mediterranean lifestyle of living in Italy and drinking white wine all the time. And we were drinking Napa Valley Cabernet. We were drinking Russian River Pinot, Sonoma Coast Pinot, and this was during the peak of the big bold California sunshine movement, where wines were mouth filling and mouth coating and just rich and delicious. There goes that favorite word. So I just was like, but this isn't what I spent a year not doing this,
right.
And I've been doing this for 4 years. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I would take pilgrimages to San Francisco and buy some, kind of European wines, because it wasn't during that era. There wasn't a lot of wine shipping, 05, 06, 07. And so yeah, I thought about this, and I really thought that if I was going to do something, it would be I wrote a business plan for Cabernet, and it didn't make sense. Wrote a business plan for white wine, and it was about depletion, it was about drinkability, it was about cash flow, and I was like, that's it. 6 months grape to glass, work with the farmers, harvest, age pretty rapidly, put it under cork, sell it immediately. Sulfur levels down, non-interventionist, boom, get it out there. Make it taste like the ocean. Make it saline, make it floral, make it citrusy, living in the Mediterranean. And that was really what I wanted to do. And I started it with, $40,000 and 400 cases. And now I'm up to, 4,500 to 5,000 cases in this 2021 vintage. And I'm hoping to take it way beyond that.
And what grape varietals are you working with?
When I first started the Massican brand, I wanted to make one single white wine. I wanted to make the conundrum of Mediterranean. I wanted to bring back Bob Mondavi's La Familia label and the Calatal movement, and Luna Vineyards and Pinot Grigio.
Calatals.
I wanted to do all of that, and I wanted it to be one single wine because I wanted the cost efficiency. I wanted to blend it all. I didn't want to buy 3 different labels, have 3 different packages, and have to sell 3 different wines. But I realized very quickly when I worked with farmers to get 6 different grape varieties, my first vintage, Tocai, Friulano, Ribolla, Giallo, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Viognier, 5 varieties in my first vintage, and that they all didn't play well together in the sandbox. And the Sauvignon Blanc was so intense that it made the subtleties of the Tocai, Ribolla, Chardonnay, Ania blend, it made it a Sauvignon Blanc-based wine, even at 5 or 10% in the blend.
Wow.
And I didn't want to make a Sauvignon Blanc-based wine because I would have to compete with everyone else in Napa Valley.
Right.
So I reluctantly made Sauvignon Blanc, and that has become one of my hottest wines. But I had to then put out 3 different wines. And, I made that Sauvignon Blanc, and I tasted it with Sam at Dennis Kelly at French Laundry. And, one of the first people in Napa Valley to taste it, and he's like, this is great. How much? At the time I was selling it like $16 a bottle in California for wholesale. And he was like, how much do you have? I was like, 50 cases. He goes, we'll take all of it. Yeah. And they poured it by the glass. Yeah. And it went on a stretch of like 9, 10 straight years by the glass at the French Laundry. And I was like, I guess I'm a Sauvignon Blanc winemaker now.
Call me Kim.
and so it's become one of my top go-to wines. It's because I really appreciate the intensity that's in that wine.
But it's not. It's
no, it's not. It's an old vineyard with low yields in a warm climate, with kind of over vigorous canopies that just makes for one of the most intense Sauvignons. It doesn't feel California. I jokingly always talk about California sunshine as it's like the embodiment of a lot of California wines. It's like we make really soft, delicious, fruit forward wines. But this particular vineyard doesn't. It takes the California sunshine and just creates pure energy, and the wine is just ripper.
Yeah, and it's not. A lot of people, particularly in Napa, go for a Bordeaux style, so they're throwing some French oak. They're doing a blend on it. This, like I said, it's a ripper, man. It's pungent.
Great word.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
it is.
But where did you find? So how did you find Tocai and Ribolla in Napa?
So, back in the gold rush era,
Exactly.
you go back to the 1849ers, and you think about everyone who came to America to find gold and made their way across country, and they were all the European immigrants. They didn't find gold. They ended up in California, and they brought with them what they know. So the Italians, the French, the Germans, Spanish. And so, literally, in 1905, the Nicolini family settled in Childs Valley, eastern Napa, and they planted, some grapes because that's what they did in Italy. And in 1946, their son comes back from World War II and says to their parents, "Why don't we have any white grapes in the vineyard?" We drank a lot of white wine when we were in Europe as GIs, and they planted this. They planted what they knew, Tocai Friulano, which they were able to access. And so, 1946, Tocai Friulano was part of the Massican blend, and it was very back then it was very like the Italians didn't sell grapes to the French didn't sell grapes to the Germans. Like it was very much like
It was like Europe.
The community, it was like Napa Valley. It was like, hey, yeah, so. So I was able to find these things, these rare, kind of creatures to steal Matthew Rorick's, tagline for his wines, Full on Hope. I was just able to find them in and around Napa Valley, but through the help of friends, like Steve Mathiasen helped me introduce me to George Vare and the Vare Vineyard when he had Ribolla Gialla. Tegan Passalacqua introduced me to the Nicolinis because he was, making wines for Turley, and he was on a hunt for old vine Zin, old vine Petit Syrah. So it's like we're an amazingly connected community, and the one thing I love about California wine country, it's an open door and an open book. The wine makers, the editors. If we were talking publishing, the editorial folks, the winemakers, we're just so closely connected, and you can call anybody, and they'll welcome you in, open up their barrel, pull a sample, and tell you how they made the wine. It's truly like something I've never seen before because there's so much competition in the world, but everyone helps each other. So I've, from Webb Marquez at Anthill Farms helping me get out to California and getting me, on board at Dumal and Larkmead to, other people helping me throughout. It's like we just got to keep paying it forward. So I live my life as a winemaker, just offering people chances and opportunities and answering their phone and answering their emails and just chatting with them and helping them understand what it is to kind of make that transition, because a lot of us want to make a transition from one career to another, and it's very, it's like I didn't have the access to any mentors or job descriptions in 2006 when I came back to Italy. It still doesn't really exist on how you change careers.
No.
So I try to make
Courage.
I just try to make myself available.
So. You mentioned earlier that Massican is Mediterranean inspired, and I remember it must have been a couple of years ago when we first met at your 10th anniversary at Verve. You had just changed the label.
Yeah, that was a great freaking party.
Yeah,
we had fun.
That was a good day.
And you stayed the whole time,
Yeah,
so I appreciate you for that. 4 hours in the afternoon of drinking some cool shit. I'm not the original label, I kind of did a mashup of my favorite wineries. So if you can visualize the old Massican winery, it had like the top border bar that you see on like Conterno and Gaia, and then the body of the wine label had like the handwritten that you see on like Palobea, Santa Chiara, and all his
my God!
wines.
Now it's so funny because I'm all set. I'm like, I know the Palobea.
And then there's a Sicilian wine, Passo Pisciato, which had like this big vintage on it and like handwriting. It looked like an old, kind of document. And so, some of my friends in California used to laugh at me like, you have the largest vintage in the history of wine labels on your wine. Like, what the fuck? It's the largest. It was a third of like the back label. And, but it was just really me stealing those concepts, cutting and pasting, and, asking a friend to lay it out for us. And yeah, it was super cool. And then, so when I decided in my 10th anniversary, it was the opportunity to change. And I love art. I love design. I feel
as 15 years old, living in Brooklyn, subscribing to Condé Nast Traveler.
So I There's a couple things. I love branding. When we worked at Time Magazine, we were always in the top 100 brands of the year, and so I always think about branding. And I started thinking like, what makes these the top? And at Time we had the red border that kind of was a signifier of our brand. You think of IBM, you think of the color blue. You think of Veuve Clicquot, you think of the color
orange.
There's all these things. I said, you think of Louboutin, you think of the red sole, the shoe, and you think of Ferraris, it's a red car. So I wanted to own a color. So we found this old, I said, I want to own a color. I don't want you to center anything on the label, because centering I can do in a Word document. It's not design technique. And I want to feel the way I feel when I walk into Charlie Bird and I see an Aesop product in the bathroom. And you know it, you recognize it. You can understand the composition of the label, even though it's simple black and white. But you just feel a little bit lifted luxury.
Yep.
And you're like, I'm in the right place.
He said, lifted luxury. I am in the right place. Okay.
And then it's aspirational, right? So that bathroom just got elevated, even though it's super dark in there and it smells like urine. Sorry, Robert.
Sorry, no diss. It's all good.
But
see you Monday, Robert.
So we designed that label, and they really ran with like my old publishing background. So it's like it's title, chapter, verse, page number, and it's like Massican, Ania, story, my handwriting in Italian. Page number is vintage. You turn the bottle, like you turn a page of a book, and it translates the whole thing. And it's really a thought. I said anything I do moving forward has to be a story unto itself. Has to be thoughtful. The blue came 1,500-year-old fresco in southern Italy near Monte Massico. The blue is archived in the Harvard Library, the pigment library of Harvard University, and so everything needed to be thought out, and everything needed to be special. And I know that's a kind of.
I'm going to bump you up to a 3.1 on your college GPA just for the level of research.
I've learned more after.
Label.
Look, we all learn.
We all learn more after we get out of school.
And maybe I should put fucking Harvard on my resume.
You should,
because I'm like my label's in there.
I mean, everything you need to know about life you learn in kindergarten, and then you get through all your schooling, and then you're like, oh, then you learn shit you want to learn, not because you're trying to do something or something you think you're supposed to do. I totally agree. I read more books. I went to fucking law school. You know how much reading you're supposed to do in law school? I read so many more books after law school. I didn't even buy books one semester.
I'm gonna
just to see if I could do it.
It's kind of like your comment about I went to school in New Haven. I'm gonna be like, my wine bottle went to school in Cambridge.
Yeah. The concept was the label was conceived in Cambridge.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
He must have was in some type of accelerator program in
the eating
Cambridge.
clubs of Harvard University.
So, we've been talking for a while, and
we haven't gotten anywhere,
which is perfect. This is what it should be. We're just enjoying wine. But when we first warmed up, we had an editorial note. You are now full-time Massican. You've left Larkmead. What was it like to do? That's got to be scary-ish. Like, steady money, income, and so what led to this?
If Massican is going to achieve what I truly wanted to achieve, I need to put all of my heart, mind, soul, and physical activity against it. I couldn't do it half-assed. I couldn't do it 10% of my time, 50% of my time. I needed to put it all in there. And I have such a belief that, being Napa Valley's only white wine winery, being one of California's only white wine wineries, I do believe that I've built 12 years of people agreeing that the wines are good. And whether it be critical or peers or buyers, retail or restaurant, the wines are good. And I want to actually see if they're really that good that I can scale them, and then with scaling, I can make some money on them, and I can, live my life and pay bills and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if I was publishing in my 20s, I was a winemaker in my 30s. I'm late into my 40s now, but can I be a business person in my 40s? Can I take this brand and make it into this, kind of wider accepted, wine brand that still maintains quality but produces quantity, and are people willing to keep putting it on their table? And I couldn't do that. I couldn't dick around anymore. just making it a passion project, doing it on the side. It's too important to me. It's too important to the I think it's done a great job for the wine industry. For as kind of we all rode that wave of the new California to show the people that you can pick. You can harvest on a lighter, brighter, fresher side, put wines on the table that are delicious, but also just, fun and food friendly and not cocktails. Because a lot of the wine industry in California, because of the sunshine, I keep referring to, creates these really big, delicious rum and cokes. And if I want a rum and coke, I want to drink a fucking rum and coke. I don't need it in my Cabernet. So I just wanted to make it, I just want to see if I can make this business work. And if I can't, hey, we'll see what happens.
But it's not Massican's not just wine. What else are you doing there? And we'll get to the latest thing. But like, you make vermouth, you make beer, vermouth, you make some different shit, man. What else are you producing on the beverage side?
But it was, as I was looking at the 10-year anniversary, I said, how do we become a global beverage company? And because my wines had unique grape varieties that got stuck into a category called alternative whites or aromatic whites, I was like, let me own the aromatic business. I make a I make a vermouth, which is an aromatized wine, spirited and aromatized. And then I make a Belgian wit beer, which is an aromatized wheat beer. And then I was like, well, the next logical thing is coffee. And the next logical thing is gin. These are aromatized beverages. And then gin is aromatized vodka, basically. It's a spirit. Yep. So I was like, let me create this arc of what this whole big company is. And what I realized very quickly is, and I'm still doing those things, still have a desire to do those things, but I couldn't do them when I was splitting my energy. I had to focus all my energy on wine and then the wine people don't sell beer. They don't sell spirits. And then I'd have to create a whole new life around beer, a whole new life around spirits, including vermouth. So I had to think about that and said, okay, let me focus, build brand equity on wine, and then we will continue these things down the line. So that's still part of the plan, but the wine's the engine. And sometimes you always want to do this. The thing that you're really good at, you always think the grass is always greener on something on the other side, and you forget that you're good at something. And I'm good at the wine side. Yep. Do I really need to make vermouth and beer and gin, or am I just kind of like trying to be aspirational and losing focus? I got to stay in my lane, basically. So I'm kind of refocusing and with Massican the next 3 to 5 years and staying in my lane and growing the wine brand. And those other things will continue to happen, but they'll happen without, a lot of stress in my life. I don't want them to cause me stress, and money is stress, and they all lose money. Beer, vermouth, they've been money losers for me for 10 years.
Yeah, you need to just get a dank IPA and sell it for $25 a 4 fucking pack. That shit. And laser print your labels. Dudes are killing it in beer and bad beer. Anyway, I digress. But you also have pivoted back towards publishing.
Yeah, this was part of thinking about Massican as something other than wine. You said it was a conduit to conversation. Yeah. I say it's conversations over wine. Wine is the allows us this opportunity to chat and talk about cool things. And during the pandemic, when we were all in lockdown, I decided I said I'm relaunching my Instagram, but I don't want to relaunch my Instagram with like bottle pics and and like fruit that like signifies what it tastes like. I don't want everybody else's Instagram. Like I'm not OPP, right? With Andre, I'm like, I don't want everyone else's Vino. I don't want everyone else's Instagram. I just want, I want my own, right?
It's so funny. That's how Black Wine got started. It was a spoof because I had my own personal Instagram, and like I was working with kids back then. This was inspirational stuff. And then my buddy was a chef. He's like, I don't know why I didn't think. You see what you see. You're in your lane. And like the whole wine thing, I just started taking bottle shots. Like I was like, it was so stupid, and people were just following. I didn't take a picture of myself for like 3 fucking years on my Instagram. But to your point, it's so funny. Like, and it was like, and like everybody's like, there's a stone fruit, and there's some salt, and there's this, and it's like laid out in the bottle, and the lighting's already like. But literally, it was a joke. Black Wine guy just taking pictures of me holding bottles, dude, and I was just gaining fucking followers. It was so funny. So I totally appreciate what you just said.
Oh, I mean, fast forward. I mean, last year I created a lifestyle magazine in relationship with Fiden Press, and did it on Instagram only because I'm like, everyone spends time on Instagram. Let me see if I can put words on Instagram as opposed to pictures. And it wasn't a great success, I'll be honest with you, but I was like, I don't care. I'm going to continue to do it because I'm going to make my Instagram a vehicle for conversation or a vehicle for aspiration, especially if it's a lifestyle magazine.
I love it.
And then
You said aspiration a few times. I love that, man.
and so, but I was like, we were all locked down. I sat on my couch so many days and nights with a glass of wine, staring at coffee table books, wanting to like eat in those restaurants, travel to those places, go to those museums. And so I created that around the Massican lifestyle. And then during the pandemic, when we started to get pods and we started to come together again, my group, in California, we would eat and drink really well, get drunk, and we talk about politics. We talk about race. We talk about all the things that are going on, whether it be, June in Minneapolis, whether it be, January 6th in Washington, D.C., like the election was important to us. So I realized that all these things this news content was important to me. And it invigorated me. So, all I cared about is voting rights. And when I got Dottie Gator to write about voting rights in the first issue of the magazine in August of this year, and I lost some subscribers in Texas.
Of course you did.
And
I love you, Texas, but of course you did lose subscribers in Texas.
Because it was about a group in San Antonio, and to have a Southern black woman write about voting rights in the first issue of the news magazine, the Massican Magazine, to a woman who I know used to work at a Wall Street Journal with her husband, who's an incredible editor, John. And I seriously, still right now I'm getting goosebumps. I'm like, this is the shit I want to do in the wine industry. These are the conversations I want to have. These are the people I want to surround myself with that want to do great shit. And that to me is, as marketers, if you hire a marketing consultant, go hire me here. You want to save a bunch of money. You hire McKinsey. They're going to tell you to become a storyteller.
Right.
You got to tell stories about yourself. You got to tell the stories about your brand. But everyone wants to tell stories about themselves.
Right.
I don't want to tell stories about myself. I want people to be talking around a bottle of Massican and not talking about the wine, talking to each other and engaging and having debates. Yeah, we may not all agree on stuff. Shit, Sal and I just published yesterday a story about a young Puerto Rican kid, trans kid. Like, it's literally in a winery Instagram. I don't give a fuck. Yeah. I want to be intelligent about who we are and what we do, and I want to open people's minds. We always tell people to open their mind and taste wines and explore and do this stuff. Do it across other aspects of your life. And
I know. God damn it. It's hard enough to get you off Josh and fucking Santa Margarita.
Sorry, I got a little heated there.
Dude, that's what this is about. It's about passion. And that's a nice segue to where we're going to talk about last thing we talked about before we let you go. Climate change. You are the founder and chair of the Environmental and Climate Change Subcommittee. What's that about? Who do you think you are, Dan Petroski?
And I'm on the board of the Napa Valley Grape Growers, and this year we kind of finally got, the group to kind of focus on, and this comes out of like research and surveying our constituency, the 700 members, grape growers, owners of vineyards in Napa Valley. They think they want to know what's important to them. We know what's important to them. Creating world-class, sustainable, resilient vineyards. So we need to do research behind that. Well, what's the challenges that are going to appear in front of them? Wildfires, their whole fucking land burning down, and climate change. It's going to change how we do business. So we launched this committee and this group, and it's something I was really engaged with back when I was working at Larkmead. As I looked at the 125th anniversary of Larkmead, which was 2020, and I said, I was like, we can't go pat ourselves on the back for being 125 years old. Not a lot of people care about old things,
not
like
nowadays.
Dusty old things. They care about young, new, fresh things. And what are you going to do for me tomorrow? So we talked about what's the next 125 years look like. Well, the biggest challenge is climate change for an agricultural business, and so
for life business.
For 20, yeah. So I put all my eggs in that basket, and as I started writing op-eds, I started interviewing people, I started hosting seminars. I took the opportunity to kind of say if Robert Mondavi was born in 2020 or was starting a wine brand in 2020, not 1967, would he have started a Chateau winery? Would he have started a Bordeaux grape variety winery in 2020 as opposed to 1967? In 1967, Paul Draper at Ridge and Bob Mondavi, they knew of like one or two wine regions of the world. They knew of Bordeaux, Burgundy, and the white hock wines of Germany. They didn't know about Vega Sicilia in Spain. They didn't know about Grange in Australia.
Didn't know about Chateau Reyes.
If they knew about it, they didn't care about it.
Right.
I mean, you said you worked at Ackermero. Go to Sherry Lehman. Sherry Lehman was like, look at their catalogs from the 60s and 70s. There's nothing in there but Bordeaux and Burgundy and some German wines. They didn't have Spanish wines. Like that stuff didn't exist on the world stage at that era. So no offense to those guys. Fast forward to 2020, what would you do today if you were starting a world-class winery? Well, I have the arrogance of saying that we are a great wine growing region in Napa Valley. We can do anything we want. And we could make the next Vega Sicilia. We could make the next Grange. We could make the next Barcavella. We could make the next Mazzabardino Tarazi. We can do these things here because we're great at doing what we do, like growing grapes and making wine. And three of those wines, two of those wines, Vega Sicilia and Grange, are probably in the top 20 wines of all time.
Oh, good God, yes.
So we have that landscape in front of us of the world's great wines, and Napa Valley just needs to realize that we're moving in a direction faster than we ever have. We're a very nascent business. Yeah, we were around for a while, but the current modern day Napa Valley started in 1995, 1994, 95.
Internet.
And Internet, Bob Parker, Wine Spectator, Cult Wines of California. Yes, Screaming Eagle was older than that. Spotswood was older than that. Harlan was older than that. But it wasn't until the post-phylloxera era, 90s, that things turned on and the record stopped and people turned and looked. It was at Jancis Robinson 2008 Etna. Bob Parker 94 Napa Valley 100-point wines, which were then releasing in 97 and 98. And then that's what turned everything on. You look at the visitation to Napa Valley for wine country. We built out that Napa Valley in 25 years faster than anyone has ever done it. And it is the greatest wine tourist travel destination in the world. And it's less than 25 years old, in my opinion. And a big part of that was a Great Recession that caused everyone to move, stay local. And we kind of jumped in our visitations to the valley during that era. But at the same time, in building everything out, we didn't know about climate change. We know about it today. We didn't talk about climate change as intensely in 2016,
until Al Gore
17.
lost the election. Is when we actually finally started talking about it. He's like, what am I do now? Okay, let me save the world. But yeah.
So it's...
and more intensely because of wildfires. Right, exactly.
Intensely because, to this current day, 2020, 2018, 1920, 21, we weren't talking about this 10 years ago, 5-7 years ago, as intensely as you were.
Correct.
Greta Thunberg and, the Paris Accord and all this stuff happened in the last 3 to 5 years. And it's because we are now believing the science. Numbers don't lie. Math doesn't lie. Believe the science.
That's debatable. Not with me.
But obviously. I mean, look at The Big Short. Going back to the 2008 financial crisis,
God.
right? Do the math on the housing market. Someone did the math on the
It's
housing market.
a great movie, by the way. I like the
It was
Christian
a great movie.
Bale. He's like, no, the math's right.
So
I want my fucking money.
I want my money back.
Um,
I have nothing. I have no skin in the game when it comes to climate change. I have no kids. I have no ownership of a vineyard or a winery or a house in Napa Valley. I give zero fucks about anything in the future because I'm leaving nothing behind except a legacy, if I leave a legacy at all. And I just care about wine. I'm not here today because I don't care about wine. I'm here today, and if we don't take action, it's too late. It's too late to continue to talk about this shit.
No, man. It's way past go time. It's like we need to start shooting fucking threes and start making them. If this is a basketball game, we just it's like we got to shoot threes
and
and lock them up.
and let me calm down a little bit and just say we all love old vines, right? So what are you going to do 20 years from now when we have to pull the Cabernet out of the ground. Are you going to start planting a new variety in 20 years, and now you're 7 years before you get your first taste of that wine, and you don't know how good the vineyard is? I want 20-year-old Tempranillo in 2040 and Touriga Nacional and Aglianico when the time comes. I don't want to be behind the curve. I want to be ahead of the curve.
Nope.
This is an opportunity for us to stop thinking 10-day weather forecast and thinking 10, 20, thinking in decades. And there's a small group of wineries that have committed to this, International Wineries for Climate Action. There's the Porto Protocol. Everybody, the community, the world stage is reverberating around this. And 2022 is going to be a big year, I think, for the wine industry and climate action. And I'm excited to do a little part of that in Napa Valley grape growers and kind of work towards educating and providing service and research and development and measurement in 2022. So we have to. And I want to drink Napa's next Vega Sicilia. Come on, that's going to be delicious.
I want to drink it with you. Last question. We're going to wrap up. Bottle of wine that just started it all for you.
Sean Thackeray Pleiades at Le Bernardin, pre-Aldo. I was with a Hollywood producer and his fiance and my girlfriend at the time, 1999. He was here filming an Adam Sandler movie. We went to Le Bernardin, and he waxed so poetic about this guy, Sean Thackeray, a former art galleryist who moved out to Bolinas
on the
west
coast.
Yeah, coast.
I love Orion, by the way. Pleiades is his name, but I love Orion. Oh my God!
And I live right by that vineyard in St. Helena right now, and so he just
I need to get some of that shit.
That was stories right there. He told me the story. That was a $17 bottle retail wine that we drank at Le Bernardin, New York City's best fish restaurant. Red wine, mix of the 7 grape varieties for the 7 Sisters of Pleiades, and that was it. And is it my favorite wine today? No, it's not. Is it the story behind that wine that hooked me? 100%.
Awesome. Dan, the fucking man. Thank you for coming in. I really appreciate you. I love you, brother, man. You're so sharp and you care. That's what I appreciate about you. You care. So let's do it again. I'm going to come visit you in Napa, but next time you come to New York, I'm going to have it set up so I can hang out with you afterwards. But everybody, oh my God. Until the next time. Oh, stop, back up. Where can they find you? Where can they be a part of what you're about, Dan?
Oh, just massican.com. And then the newsletter's on Substack. So if you're familiar with the new publishing platform, Substack, you can find the magazine there. You can find it on the Instagram. I publish my Massican Winery Instagram is all the news magazine and the last year's magazine with Fiden Press. So Instagram, website, Substack, and local restaurants and retail.
Awesome. Everybody, until next time, cheers to all the mavericks, the philosophers, the deep thinkers, and all you wine drinkers. Peace.
Thanks, MJ.